But it depends though, because I know it's conveyed through many cultures. But on the other hand, for example, even if you look at the Egyptian, ancient African cosmogonies and mythology, you can see the place of the woman there in the goddesses, the Isis and everything. You can see the because people usually think that I know we talked about that before. People usually think that all the culture like the ones in Africa are patriarchal. It hasn't always been the case. Africans have a very special and unique place for the woman as a very special person, the mother of humanity actually. Because if you know, the biggest goddess in the African culture is Maat. Maat is what? The mother, the king, the mother of wisdom, peace, balance. Is a female, is a woman, and she carries the whole community. She carries the whole society, because the goal of African communities usually is to ensure balance, justice, fairness. And the goddess who represents that is a woman, is not a man. So she's the ultimate being who is safeguarding these kind of values. So that kind of tells you a little bit the understanding and treatment of women by African cultures. That whole notion that the African culture is like patriarchal and the woman will stay and cook and this and that and they will do this, that has been borrowed. We borrowed it from the Westerner when they came to invade Africa. We borrowed it from them. That is not what, in our ancestors' time, that's not what Africa was like. Yeah, so there's so many misrepresentations in the gender dynamic in the scholarship today that is not just true, because they look at Africa today through the lenses of European experience without considering what was happening before that. Because I usually discuss with people like and me living even in Asia, in Taiwan here, culturally is a little challenging for me not to interrupt people who talk, because it's considered rude. And when you look in the African context, when you talk and people don't interrupt you, it's actually almost considered rude, because you feel like the person is not listening to you. Yeah. so you can see that even culturally, like there's some kind of interesting dynamics there. Yeah, because the way the African culture organize themselves, they know, because it's community living, because it's collective living, that there will always be problems among people. So it's expected that there will be conflicts. So, and all the values and the principle and the guidelines are there to ensure how to resolve conflicts. And you as a counselor, that's basically what you do with your clients. Because when a client comes to see you and is suffering from some kind of mental problem, it's because they're not able to resolve some personal conflicts in their head. And then they project now the symptom of illness. So in the African culture, for example, even if a child has a big argument with a father, though the culture requires you as a child to honor and respect your elder, your parents and everything. You cannot talk to them or anything and disrespect them. You curse in society if you do that. I know, because I told you the story about my own older brother who disrespected the oldest woman in the village. She was 105 or 10 years old, and the whole village hated it, and the woman cursed him, and his life was destroyed, and now he cannot be cured, because it's a reality. So even though you have that sense of respecting the elders, there is still space for people to voice their chagrins, to voice their displeasure, You know, the thing that make them angry and everything. Like when my own older brother wanted to take money away from our father, almost really beating him up and taking all of his money. The whole village sat them down, he and my father, and really curse him that you cannot do this to your dad, and ordered him to buy goat and wine and drink and all that, a lot of food, so that the village can come together and find a way to forgive him and save his life. So that's how strong these things are. There's a cultural thing, right? And then, well, he was asking me money to buy it for him anyway, because he didn't have the money. I'm like, did I ask you to go beat our dad to get his money? Anyway, that is a side note. So even though there is that kind of thing in our culture, but there's also a sense of bringing people together and sit. You see, even though what he did to our father is unacceptable in our community, you cannot yell, disrespect your dad or your mom or anything, or elder. But he went as far as actually even beating him up and taking his money, which is actually criminal in our values. But the village still found a way to bring them to sit together and talk about what happened. So he was still given a chance to explain his side of the issue. And my father also has a chance to explain his side of it. Can you imagine, you know, so because the community expects conflicts and know that the only way the community can evolve in a cohesive, harmonious way is to be able to communicate. So, and there is expectation that people will yell at each other, interrupt each other, is accepted, because it's part of the whole dynamic, because it's also even healing when you bring it out there. So those are the some of the things, and the goddess who monitors that kind of community regulation is Ma'at. She's a female, she's a woman. Just to give you an idea of the position that women have in African societies. So that lie that I hear in America and Europe and elsewhere, that you know, African, they don't really respect women and all that, that's a big lie. They're just projecting their own mistreatment of women onto other cultures. So, and I vehemently and strongly disagree with that characterization. Yeah, this is a cultural thing, and this is not really an African thing. This is a religious thing. Now I'm speaking about pure African traditions that did not exist in pure African tradition. That women excision, cutting their clitoris, came through the Islamic Muslim traditions, because that happened in mostly Muslim countries. It happens in Senegal, which is predominantly Muslim. It happens in Mali, which is predominantly Muslim. It happens in Guinea, which is predominantly Muslim. We have Muslim in Cameroon, but in the northern part of Cameroon. But I haven't heard that much. If it happens, it's in minority. The northern of Nigeria is predominantly Muslim. I haven't heard that much, but if it happens, it's in the minority. But I've never heard that in the southern part of Cameroon, which is Christian and mostly indigenous, African indigenous. And most of African countries the side that remain indigenous, who did not really go for either Christianity or Islam, who remain pure African, I've never heard anything of excision in those communities. Never. But excision comes from countries that are predominantly of the Islamic faith, because it came through that culture and religion. So it's not an African thing. And that again is one of the mischaracterization of Africa, because now when you see on TV, they don't blame anyone, they blame Africa. They say, oh, those countries in Africa who practice excision, and then girls are dying because they're cutting the clitoris and they're bleeding to death, is not okay, it's antiquated, it's archaic. They need to change and come to civilization. And what people hear is Africa bad because they kill girls by cutting their clitoris and letting them bleed to death. And when you see it's Muslim people who started that, because, and you can see that it's Muslim culture where women, even in Cameroon, my good best friend, remember I have Muslim blood. My mom's parents were Muslim. My mom's mom, my grandmother from my mother's side was Muslim. So I have Muslim blood. I was born in Muslim side of Cameroon. I went to primary school in Muslim, so I speak I speak the Muslim language of Northern Cameroon. So I speak as somebody who knows what I'm talking about. And my good friends in Northern Cameroon, I can see how they treat their women. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, the wife, I never, like good best friend, we've been together for years, I've never seen his wife with my eyes. Seen. Because the wife is not allowed to go out. And he goes out to the market, buys food, brings it home. Wife is just hiding in the kitchen, cooking. And if guests even come, it's the daughter or son who goes to the kitchen, take the food to bring to guests. The wife doesn't even come to where the guests are sitting in the living room. Because that's how they protect their wives and are so selfish, and the wife is non-existent. So if the young couple and they don't have children, so then they can allow the wife to bring food to the husband in the living room with his friend, but then she will have to cover her head and her face and bow down to them, put the food and cover it and go. I'm like, damn, man. Yeah, my friends. And you say this is Africa, but it's not Africa. This is the Islamic culture. You know, like the woman is some kind of precious property that no one should see. Because it's my property, it's for me, it belongs to me, I put it there behind me. So, and I go to the market, I buy food, I bring it to her there, she cooks. I go, I do this, she's just hiding there. I'm like, I've known you for like a million years, I don't even know what your wife looks like. They're not allowed. So, and people will say, this is Africa. When they show that on the news in America, in Europe, they will portray Africa with that lens. When this is not Africa, this is Islam, because it's applied in the Islamic practicing people of Northern Cameroon and Nigeria. So that kind of treatment of women, which is always mischaracterized, defining a continent, which originally did not do that. Again, I remind you, our goddess as African are mostly women, responsible for our values. So that tells you the strongest warriors in African mythology are women. I forgot the goddess of in the island, in the Central America. What is her name? How can I forget? There's so many goddesses who fought the white colonizers. If you remember the movie Black Panther, you see those women with no hair, shave, and wars and killing. Do you think it's just a movie? It is taken from African culture, because this is what women have always been in African culture, warriors. So even today, look at the Maasai in Kenya. Those women with the long ears, with the thing in the heel, big circle, with the big sword, going to kill animals in the forest and all that, in the Maasai. On equal footing with their husband. Not that it was Muhammad said, wait, I will kill the animal for you. On equal footing going hunting. So this is the Africa that is not shown to the world. And as again goes to the Western ideology of putting down a culture in order to dominate it and to show the negative side of that culture, which was imported from outside of that culture, and say, see, they're primitive, they're not really like us civilized. So yeah, so I was discussing with a friend of mine here in Taipei. She is a liberal. She hates Trump with all her heart. And the main reason why she hates Trump is because she says Trump is misogynist, hates women. So, and I wrote something here that try to explain Trump's behavior towards women in a context, in a European context. It's easy to take one person as a scapegoat and not look at your own culture that has been developing that kind of treatment of women that now you pretend that you're hating because one person is doing it blatantly. You see? So that's the whole thing for me that I find very, very funny. So, so for example, she says, this is another project of a book that I will write much later. She says, my friend here in that one was very liberal. She said, Trump is a narcissist who treats women like worthless sex objects, right? So, and I say, it is the umpteenth time I hear this. Most of my liberal friends recite it like Sanskrit mantras, reminding me of my Muslim neighbors' kids when I was growing up in Cameroon. Those kids would sit on dusty floors in small straw and muddy huts and repeat the same verses of the Quran as loud as they could all day long. I always wondered if their teacher sitting in front of the room understood anything the kids were screaming from the top of their lungs. But it didn't really matter because as an echo chamber, the goal was to make sure that the kids repeat the verses as many times as possible until they memorized them and were able to regurgitate them like automatons. So I can see the same thing happening in progressive anti-Trump circle. So, and I go on and say something. So, but I say, here's the thing. I don't hear any solution to the Trump problem and all the strategy and everything. So, and I just want to go quickly where I show the whole context about the Western build up to this kind of, yes. Okay. Trump symbolizes a patriarchal system that has deep roots in the Indo-European asili, the matrix and ideological core of a culture. This patriarchal system culminates in a desire of men to dominate women. The 4,000-year-old tradition comes from the association of maleness, again, the European as a male, maleness with superiority. So you're male, you're superior, and femaleness with inferiority. It's not Africa that developed that. It's European who developed that concept. So in Yorugo, the book that you and I are studying, Marimba says, she asked the question, why was it the male in the Indo-European experience who sought separation and dominance rather than the female? It was not the female in the European society who wanted to separate the thinking and the feeling. It was men and the Plato who said men can think, women can only feel. So they cannot really be men. They cannot be really human beings because they cannot think. It was an African who said that. So, and then she said, or did the female share the same ambition but simply lost out because of disparity in physical strength? So was it the women who wanted separation but they lost because physically they're weaker than men? She's asking questions. So, and then somebody says, another scholar say, he answered the question by suggesting that male domination is related to anatomical characteristics that allow the human male to rape the female. So according to him, a male, has the right to rape a woman because physically he's stronger than a woman. That is not coming from an African philosophy. That is not coming from an African culture. That is coming from a European culture. And Annie now responds to her own rhetorical question. Separation and dominance are themselves part of a male as patriarchal approach to reality. So the European always look at the world as through the eyes of a male. So which became associated with European with maleness and gender. So indeed, beginning with Plato's proclamation that reason was superior to emotions, and associating men with reason and women with emotions, to Freud, along with traditional European rejection of Jung. So the European rejected Jung psychology because they thought he was giving too much credit to women, because his research on the anima, to look at the female side of people and the anima mundi, that actually the world is mostly a female thing. The Europeans were not ready for things like that. That's why they rejected Jung. But Freud was mostly talking about the male, the strong male, which should dominate the female, and saying how the reason why we have problem mental health is because we allow our female emotions to come and crowd our male reason and have problems. So we need to make the male reason prevail and control the female overreacting to put it down to the id. And Europeans embraced that as, yes, this is what we believe in, and rejected Jung. It wasn't the Africans. So you can understand that a million example here. Plato, the person who actually developed the European cultural thinking in terms of reason, Plato, he was more concerned with developing an Indo-European asili in its intellectual and ideological form. And he says, not only, according to Plato, not only were males superior, but they were superior in ways that demanded the control of women. Not only they were superior, but because they were superior, that superiority demanded that they should control women. So that is how they developed their culture. Now they blame Trump. See how easy it is? Oh, I can't believe he hate women. You developed that in your own culture. And now you take an easy scapegoat to show how you defend women when you cannot actually look at your own culture that created Trump. I don't believe in that kind of stupidity. So, and she says, only men could be philosophers, meaning only men can think. And women were not even qualified to be their lovers. So because they're philosopher, they are supermen. To allow themselves to have sex with women or date women was to bring them down to the women level. So the women were not even qualified as human beings to date philosophers, because they were operating at a higher level of reason. So they could not bring themselves down to emotions. It wasn't the Africans who developed that. It was the European who developed that kind of thinking. And that was pervasive in Europe, America, and all that. And Trump is just a manifestation, a symptom of the kind of culture that has been developing in Europe for more than 4,000 years. So I can go on and on here to show you, but I will stop here. I can go on and on here to show you that when it comes to gender and the way men treat women, and then they look at Africa and say, look at how those Africans are treating the women, excising the young girls and letting them die bleeding and blah 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 blah. That is missing the whole point. That is like looking at your own problem and blaming them on somebody else.